విధానంలో డాక్టర్ బిఆర్ అంబేద్కర్ ఓపెన్ యూనివర్సిటీ దేశంలోనే మొట్టమొదటి సార్వత్రిక విశ్వవిద్యాలయం. దాదాపు 2.5 దశాబ్దాలుగా దూర విద్యా విధానం ద్వారా కంప్యూటర్ కోర్సును అనుసంధానం చేస్తూ బీఏ, బీకామ్, బీఎస్సీ డిగ్రీ కోర్సులను అందిస్తోంది. పోస్ట్ గ్రాడ్యుయేషన్ స్థాయి, డిగ్రీ, డిప్లొమా స్థాయి కోర్సులను ఔత్సాహికులైన విద్యార్థులకు అందిస్తోంది. డెవలప్మెంట్ స్టడీస్లో సెంటర్ ఫర్ ఎకనామిక్స్ అండ్ సోషల్ స్టడీస్ ద్వారా ఎంఫిల్, పీహెచ్డీతో పాటు విశ్వవిద్యాలయమే స్వయంగా దూర విద్యా విధాన అంశంపైన పీహెచ్డీ వంటి పరిశోధన కోర్సులు ప్రవేశపెట్టింది. రాష్ట్ర వ్యాప్తంగా సుమారు 4.5 లక్షల మంది విద్యార్థులు ఈ విశ్వవిద్యాలయం నుంచి ఉన్నత విద్యావకాశాలు పొందుతున్నారు. డాక్టర్ బిఆర్ అంబేద్కర్ సార్వత్రిక విశ్వవిద్యాలయం స్థానికంగా స్వయం బోధనా పద్ధతిలో ముద్రణ రూపంలో రూపొందించిన కోర్స్ మెటీరియల్ అందిస్తోంది. కోర్స్ మెటీరియల్ అధ్యయనానికి సహకరించే విధంగా రేడియో, టెలివిజన్ పాఠ్యాంశాల ఆధారంగా కార్యక్రమాలు ప్రసారం చేస్తోంది. అధ్యయన కేంద్రాల ద్వారా ఏర్పాటు చేసే సలహా సంసర్గ తరగతులు, సైన్స్ ప్రాక్టికల్ సౌకర్యాలు విద్యార్థులకు స్వయం అధ్యయనానికి ఒక చక్కటి అవకాశం. ఇవి విద్యార్థి సమీపంలో ఉండే అధ్యయన కేంద్రం నుంచే పొందొచ్చు.
Hello and welcome to this discussion on the topic wealth tax and its assessment. This lesson pertains to the subject taxation of the MCOM final year program of the university. Wealth tax is a direct tax. It is charged on the net wealth of the SSC. It is a tax on the benefits derived from the ownership of the property. The tax has to be paid year after year on the same property on its market value, whether or not the property yields any income. The Income Tax Department under the Ministry of Finance administers the Wealth Tax Act together with the rules framed thereunder. To have a thorough discussion on the topic wealth tax and its assessment, we have with us today in our studios Mr. Y.V.S.T. Sai, Indian Revenue Service, Additional Commissioner of Income Tax, Range 6. We also have with us Shri Vishwanath Garu, Vice Principal, Aurora's Degree and PG College. During the discussion, if you have any queries or you require further clarifications to be given, please feel free to phone in to us on the following telephone numbers: 040 2703 1431, 2703 1432, 2703 1433. A specific request from our side is please keep your discussion and your questions limited to the topic that we are discussing today. This is a purely academic platform. Please do not seek any consultation with the experts here. We will begin the discussion with asking Shri Vishwanath Garu, when did the wealth tax come into existence?
The Wealth Tax Act came into existence from 1/4/1957. From 57 onwards, the department is collecting wealth tax.
Okay. Is there any constitutional mandate for the Wealth Tax Act?
For every tax, the constitutional mandate will be there. Entry 86, list 1 and schedule 7th of Constitution of India, the wealth tax will be collected.
Okay. Now, Mr. Sai, you are a person who are directly in the field. Now, probably you will be in a position to tell us what is the total collection of wealth tax per year in India.
First of all, to all the viewers of this program, very good afternoon. Wealth tax, normally it is around 400 crores. In financial year 2019, I think it is around 425 crores.
425 crores.
That is collected.
Okay. Mr. Vishwanath, who are the people who are liable to pay wealth tax?
An individual, Hindu undivided family, a company need to pay wealth tax.
Okay.
And if the wealth exceeding 15 lakhs, then only these three people need to pay tax, these three persons. Otherwise, they need not pay tax if the wealth is less than 15 lakhs for the assessment year 2009-10. For 2010-11, they increased the basic exempted limit from 15 lakhs to 30 lakhs. For the assessment year 2009-10, up to 15 lakhs it is exempted. Beyond 15 lakhs on the net wealth, they need to pay a tax at 1%.
So, the rate of tax is 1%.
1%.
1% on
The net wealth.
Net wealth. And what is the valuation date?
31st March of the preceding year to the assessment year is the wealth is the valuation date. For the assessment year 2009-10, 31st March of the previous year, that is 31st March of 2009 will be taken as assessment date.
Okay. So, it is the last day of the previous year.
Previous year will be the valuation date.
Valuation date for wealth tax. It is same as if for income tax. Act
Income
also.
tax up to midnight of 31st March.
Oh.
The assets held by an SSC will be taken.
So, as on that date, whatever assets belong to the SSC, on that he has to pay tax at the rate of 1%
On the wealth exceeding 15 lakhs.
15 lakhs.
On net wealth.
Okay. Sir, Vishwanath sir is telling about net wealth. What is net wealth, sir?
Net wealth is defined in the Wealth Tax Act in subsection M of section 2.
Okay.
Net wealth is actually the value of all the aggregate value of all the assets belonging to an SSC on the valuation date minus the debts incurred by him in relation to the assets.
Okay.
So, whatever debts he incurred for purchase of those assets or acquiring those assets, that has to be reduced from the net wealth.
Net wealth.
That is
so,
the-
that becomes the net wealth.
Net
The
wealth.
total assets minus the whatever expenditure is incurred to acquire those assets.
In
or-
case of non-residents,
Okay.
the non-residents are people outside India. The assets outside India and debts outside India will be excluded from the net.
Okay. For non-residents, assets outside India will be excluded.
Assets and debts both.
Okay, okay, okay. Mr. Vishwanath, sir is talking about assets. What are the taxable assets under wealth tax?
Only 6 assets are taxable under Wealth Tax Act. They are number 1, buildings.
Okay.
Number 2, motor car or motor vehicles. Number 3, jewelry, precious metals and stones, bullion. Number 4, yacht, boats, etc. Aeroplane, helicopter. Next, number 4, you can say urban land. Next, number 6, cash.
Okay.
Only these are the assets which are taxable under Wealth Tax Act. Only these are the 6 assets which are taxable. There are some exceptions for these assets. If you take building, so the building is exempted. One building is exempted, residential building, which is for an individual and Hindu undivided family. Farmhouse and guest house is exempted from tax if it is 25 kilometers away from municipality or cantonment board, and a residential house which is given on rent for 300 days, a minimum period of 300 days during the previous year is exempted from tax, and a property which is let out, that is
Okay.
more than 300 days, and commercial buildings and complex are exempted from tax because they are generating some income, and staff quarters given to staff whose gross salary is less than 5 lakhs,
Okay.
it is exempted from tax in case of buildings. Whereas the second one, motor car, if you take, if the motor vehicles are running on hire basis or if they are in stock in trade, they are exempted from tax. The next one, yacht, boats, aircrafts and helicopters, if they are using for tourism purpose, for generating some business income by using them, they are exempted from tax. And urban land, if it is 8 kilometers away from the municipal or cantonment area and where the population is less than 10,000,
Okay.
it is exempted from tax. And if the construction, if they are not getting permission to construct the house due to some government reasons, it is exempted from tax for 2 years. Whereas in case of it is in stock in trade for those construction businesses, if it is in stock in trade for 10 years it is exempted from tax. If you come to jewelry and gold, if it is in stock in trade it is exempted from tax, and for X ruler which is recognized by the government, if the form of the asset is not changed, jewelry is not changed, it is exempted from tax. In case of cash, up to rupees 50,000 in case of an individual and Hindu undivided family is exempted from tax, whereas in case of company, if it is recorded in the books of accounts, that is exempted from tax. The unrecorded amount is taxable. These are the exemptions for these 6 assets. Only these 6 assets are taxable, the remaining assets are not taxable under Wealth Tax Act. They will not be attracted by Wealth Tax Act.
So, there are basically 6 assets on which the wealth tax has to be paid.
Right.
Okay, Mr. Sai, what is the meaning of jewelry?
Jewelry is precious metals like gold, silver, platinum. When they are made into ornaments, and sometimes you may put it in apparel, utensils, and also furniture, and it may contain precious stones like diamonds or semi precious stones. All these items will become jewelry.
Okay.
Only thing is, when you look at gold, it is like, for example, gold, you have either it is in a pure form or cast form or wrought form, but not less than 9 carats purity.
Okay.
If it is more than 9 carats purity, then it becomes, that is how you distinguish between imitation jewelry and normal jewelry.
The carats are important.
And like certain things like gold deposit bonds, which are, we keep gold and get a deposit bond. They are not treated as jewelry. Though jewelry you have kept with an authority for bond, it is not treated as jewelry.
Because that is not in possession with you? Or
For a specific purpose, it has been given for a productive purpose.
Okay.
The whole idea is after 93-94, whether any asset is a productive asset or non-productive asset.
Okay.
That is how it is distinguished.
So, if the asset is yielding any income, it becomes a productive
That's
asset.
why from a very inclusive definition, we have come to, like Mr. Vishwanath told, 6 assets only now.
Okay.
And even those 6 assets, if they are put to productive use, we try to exclude them from the.
So, the whole idea behind Wealth Tax Act is to see that the assets are as productive as
You can
possible.
see as a broad philosophy.
In the broadest
year
sense of the
93-94.
term. Very good. So, Mr. Vishwanath, now are there any persons who are exempt from the payment of wealth tax? You said there are 6 categories of assets on which tax has to be paid, wealth tax has to be paid. Is it to be paid by all the people, or are there any people who are exempt from paying this wealth tax?
There are exemptions. Few people are exempted to pay wealth tax. They are charitable companies, cooperative societies, social clubs, political parties, as per meaning under section 13A of Income Tax Act, and as well firms also exempted to pay wealth tax, because in case of firms the partners need to pay tax on their wealth of the firms. So, these are the people who are exempted from wealth tax, and these people need not pay any wealth tax.
Okay. So, Mr. Sai, if you could enlighten us further on the question that I had asked you. Now, are there any assets which in themselves otherwise are taxable as assets, but they are exempted from the Wealth Tax Act?
Actually, section 5 of the Wealth Tax Act deals with this subject. For example, one house or part of a house belonging to an assessee is exempt. Similarly, a plot of land 500 square meters or less. Somebody has a plot, he wants to build a house, so only one plot. Then for coming to trusts which are charitable, a property held under the trust is not taxable for wealth.
Okay.
Similarly, one palace of a ruler. Before 1971, we had the definition of ruler and privy purse was given. After 26th Amendment of Constitution, we have removed that. But still, at that time, what was defined as a palace of a ruler? That is exempt from wealth tax. And Mr. Vishwanath told jewelry, heirloom, we call it heirloom jewelry.
Okay.
That comes as not as a personal jewelry, but like some ceremonial crowns, swords, sewn with jewelry and all. They have been identified earlier as heirloom jewelry, and under certain conditions they should not be changed, they should be kept in a proper form, open to inspection. Those things are exempt from Wealth Tax Act. These are coming under section 5.
Section
And
5.
also co-parcenary interest in HUF, because Hindu undivided family we are taxing separately as an entity, therefore members share in co-parcenary property will not be taxed separately, otherwise it will become double taxation. These are the assets which are exempt from wealth tax.
Okay. You happen to mention about property. What is property, sir?
Actually, property is a very term of widest import. In fact, Supreme Court in the case of Ahmad G. Arif, they have discussed very detailed. Property is actually a bundle of rights. Normally, we tend to take property as 100% ownership, but it is not necessary. So, if in any asset coming under section 2EA, if you have gained interest, that becomes taxable to that extent. That is why we use the word not ownership, belonging.
Yeah.
So, we have to put a question whether any part of the asset belongs to X. If that part of the asset belongs to X, we have to value it to that extent and then tax it. So, therefore, property means suppose a 50% ownership, or maybe the ideal example is remainder man's interest. Normally, what happens, one property is kept for life. Suppose we keep we give some gold. Say the gold will be used by X. After his death, it will go to his children. So, the children will become absolute owners after the death of the father or mother. So, in such case, what we call remainder man's interest. That is also interest in the property.
Can you please repeat that term, sir, you were telling?
We call remainder man's interest.
Okay.
Suppose earlier days they used to give land. Land you enjoy during your lifetime, you can't sell it. So, life interest holder gets the income from the land, and thereafter it goes to the children of the life interest holder, then they can sell it. So, we have to value their interest as on today, though they are not having the possession today. Actually, physical possession is not a criteria. You have a right in the asset or not, that is what is the criteria.
So, we can say it is a tax on the benefits derived from the ownership.
Derivable, what we call your interest.
Interest.
How much is your interest? If I work out today, what is your interest in money terms in the asset, that will be taxable. But it has to be an asset under 2EA. It cannot be any asset like agricultural land, it is not an asset.
Okay. So, as Mr. Vishwanath was telling about those 6 categories of assets, it has to be at least one of those assets which are mentioned under that particular
Very
section. Very good. So, Mr. Vishwanath, what is the method in which you value an asset?
The assets will be valued depend upon, as I said earlier, last date of the assessment, previous year to the assessment year, on 31st March, we will take different valuation of the assets. If you take in case of business assets, rule 14(1), global valuation of business assets will be done. In case of depreciable assets, we will take the written down value of the asset. In case of non-depreciable assets, we will take the book value. Whereas, in case of stock, assessment under Income Tax Act, it is mentioned, based on that we will value the assets. Assets not disclosed in balance sheet, as per the provisions of schedule, we will value the assets. Some assets may be mentioned in the balance sheet, but they may not be there. Those assets will be excluded. Different methods of valuation of assets are there. Based on the methodology given in the Act, we need to adopt the methodology and we will calculate the value of asset on 31st March of the previous year, that is previous year to the assessment year, the last date.
So, that is how the assets are
Valued.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Sai, specifically, can you tell me how is a house property valued?
Actually, normally we value either by yield method or what we call cost of acquisition.
Okay.
Now, in wealth tax we call it rent capitalization method, though it is not mentioned in the Act. So, rule 3 of schedule 3 of the Wealth Tax Act gives the modus of how to value a house. So, what you do is you take something called net maintainable rent, work out. Then if the property is freehold, you multiply it by 12.5 times. If it is a leased property and the lease is unexpired lease is more than 50 years or more, then you multiply not by 12.5 but by 10.
Okay.
Then if the value of the lease is less than 50 years, unexpired lease, you work out a factor of 8. Now, then what you do, you work out a value. Then you compare it with what is cost of acquisition or construction. If the cost of acquisition or cost of construction is more, you will take that value. But there are certain exceptions to this. If the property is acquired after 31/3/74, and then if the cost of the construction is less than 50 lakhs, in case of 4 metros, Delhi, Bombay, Chennai,
1974 less than 50 lakhs.
after 31/3/74, and you have spent less than 50 lakhs in cost of construction or acquisition,
Okay.
that is in 4 metros, that is Chennai, Bombay, Delhi and Kolkata, or in a place like Hyderabad or any other area, 25 lakhs. So, if it is less than 25 lakhs, then you do not take this value. You take the rent capitalization method value only, that net maintainable rent into either 12.5 times or 10 times or 8 times. Now, there is one more, this is actually to give benefit to small people, so that we will not tax them on the value of construction. The property may be yielding lesser rent, so we will take the rent capitalization method. And one more benefit we give to the assessee is, for property which is acquired before, which is constructed acquired before 31/3/71, the value will be freezed on the valuation date of that year. Or if it is after 31/3/71, suppose somebody constructed a house in 78, on 31/3/78 we take the value and freeze it. That means for one house, we do not want to tax him on the market rate as on today, that is on the valuation date. We want to tax him only on the date when he constructed. That is benefit given by the legislature to people. So, one house value will be work out as per schedule 3 on the date, not today's valuation date, either 31/3/71 or if the house is constructed later to 31/3/71, that date. But rest of the houses you will work out either rent calculation method or then compare with cost of construction, and according to the provision you take whatever value has to be taken.
So, that is a very nice explanation, sir. Mr. Sai happened to mention about net maintainable rent. I did not get it, sir. What is, how do you calculate this net maintainable rent, Mr. Vishwanath?
Net maintainable rent to arrive from gross maintainable rent, we need to deduct 2 items or 2 amounts. That is, number 1, municipal taxes, number 2, 15% of gross maintainable rent.
Can you please repeat that again, sir? From the gross maintainable rent, you have to deduct
municipal or any local tax,
Okay.
and 15% of the gross maintainable rent is to be deducted. Whereas municipal tax or the local taxes need not be paid, it is allowed as deduction on accrual basis also. Then we will arrive the net maintainable rent. Then we will go for capitalization of net maintainable rent as sir explained us.
So, Mr. Sai, what is annual rent?
Annual rent is nothing but actually rent receivable or received in a particular year. But there are certain cases where a property is let out only for say part of the year. Suppose for 6 months you let out, you got lakh of rupees. Then what we do is we extrapolate it to the 12 months. For example, 6 months case we make it 2 lakh rupees. 1 lakh you got, we make it 2 lakh rupees. So, this is basically in case where actual rent is received, we take that value. If rent is not received, but we want to work out, then either we have to go to the standard rent fixed by a municipality, or nowadays they have got gross area value or something, they come and work out. That we take, and we take for the 12 months. That is the annual rent.
So, you try to raise it if the house property is let out for a period which is less than 12 months, you try to raise it to a period of 12 months and then you make a comparison.
Because that is how we work out the total value of the asset.
Okay.
How much it can yield in a year, then multiply by that 12.5 or 10 or 8, whatever is.
Okay. So, it is same as in the case of house property, dear students, where in the case of house property, if the property is not actually let out for a period more than 12 months or exactly 12 months, we try to take up the value up till a period of 12 months and then compare with MRV and FRV and things like that. The same thing holds good even for valuation under Wealth Tax Act, as sir has just now told us. Mr. Vishwanath, what is rent?
The rent, the definition of rent consists of whether if the property is let out, we will give for, as sir said, X amount. Whatever amount, whether we received or receivable, will come under rent. So, here the actual rental value to arrive, we need to do little bit calculations for the rent received or receivable. From the rent received or receivable, for that we need to add any municipal taxes borne by the tenant, those to be added. And number 2, if repairs are borne by the tenant, 1/9 of the annual rental value should be added. And if any interest is there on security deposit, some deposit may be given by the tenant to the landlord. In such a case, 15% of the interest on the deposit amount is to be added. If the owner is agreed to pay any percentage of interest to the tenant, it should be subtracted from that 15% of the deposit amount, and the remaining balance is only to be added. Any premium paid by the tenant which is non-refundable, it should be divided between the number of years of agreement equally. Per annum how much amount we will get, that should be added. And apart from that, prerequisite values derived by the owner from the tenant, that also should be added, whether it is monetary or non-monetary. Then we will arrive the actual rental value. Once you arrive the actual rental value, it will be compared with municipal rental value and fair rental value. The which higher of these 3 amounts will be taken as gross maintainable rent.
That was a very fine explanation given by sir with regard to the actual method of valuation and the actual way in which how to arrive at rent. Now, this seems to be a very important point. So, at this juncture I would request the students to please take a paper and pen and keep it ready, because in a very short while from now we are breaking for news, and after that we will come back and again request sir to give us the same answer. Please make a note of it. See you after the news break. Welcome back after the news break. As I had already requested you all, I hope you are all ready with a paper and a pen. We will again ask Mr. Vishwanath what is rent. He is going to give us a very detailed description, and please do make a note of it. It will help you in your examinations. Mr. Vishwanath, please.
Valuation of the house or a building. To arrive actual rental value, the rule are given under section under 3 to rule 3 to 8. There are 2 cases. Case 1, if the rental value of the building is not given, and if the value of the building is given, we need to take the fair market value on the date of valuation, that is on 31st March. For the current assessment year 2009-10, we need to take on 31st March 2009. Whatever fair market value of the asset is there, that will be taken as the value of building. Case 2, if the rental value of the building is given, then the procedure which I have explained to be followed, that I am repeating once again. We need to take annual rental value. After taking the annual rental value, we need to add if any municipal taxes borne by the tenant, that is number 1. If the municipal taxes borne by the tenant, municipal or local taxes paid by the tenant is to be added. Number 2, if repairs are borne by the tenant, 1/9 of the annual value, the annual rental value already we have taken at first, 1/9 of that value should be added if the tenant paid the repairs. The next one, interest on security deposit. What do you mean by security deposit? You know, the deposit kept by the tenant with the owner of the house is called security deposit. On that 15%, interest is to be added. If the agreement between the owner and tenant is like this, on the deposit some percentage to be paid by the owner to the tenant. Whatever percentage he is paying, that amount to be deducted from 15%. For example, if the owner agreed to pay 9% as interest to the tenant on security deposit, 15% minus 9%, 6% on the deposit amount to be calculated and it should be added. If no interest is agreed to pay, 15% is to be calculated and that to be added on the deposit. Next, we need to add premium received from per annum from the tenant. What do you mean by premium received? We will call it as goodwill. Tenant is taking, say for example, for 5 years lease, a non-refundable amount of 5 lakh he agreed to pay for 5 years in addition to the rent. For 5 years 5 lakhs, per year it will be 5 years 5 lakhs divided by 5 years. It will be 1 lakh rupees per annum. That 1 lakh rupees only to be added, because we are calculating only for the current year the value of the asset. If you add 5 lakhs, the amount will be increased substantially. So, the amount should be divided equally for the period let out as per their agreement. The next one is prerequisite value of value derived by the owner from the tenant is also to be added to the value, that is annual rental value, to arrive the actual rental value. Once you arrived the actual rental value, it should be compared with the municipal rental value or fair rental value. In these two, whichever is higher should be taken as the gross maintainable rent. Once you arrived the gross maintainable rent, then to arrive the net maintainable rent, we need to less municipal taxes and 15% of gross maintainable rent, then we will arrive net maintainable rent. And already sir explained you about capitalized net maintainable rent with specified factor to be multiplied, that already sir had explained you earlier. This is the way you will arrive gross maintainable rent and net maintainable rent.
So, I hope you have got some amount of clarity with regard to what is rent. Again, I would like to remind all our viewers, this is an interactive session. Please do phone in to us on the following telephone numbers 040-2703-1431, 2703-1432, 2703-1433. We will make this as interactive as possible. Please do call us. We have got experts here, Mr. Sai, who is an Indian Revenue Service person, and Mr. Vishwanath, who is a very fine teacher. We will try to make as good as use of this program. Mr. Sai, coming to you, do you think any adjustments have to be made for an unbuilt area around the house?
Yeah, perfectly. What happens is, all this time when we are talking valuation of property, we are talking of house and apartment land together. So, normally we have only spoken till now about valuation of the house, but there are certain instances where the plot of the land may be very big and the house built is only a tiny fraction of it. To tackle such situations, we have got a rule 6 in schedule 3 of the Wealth Tax Act, wherein we try to factor out 3 parameters. First is the aggregate area, that means what is the total area of the plot. Second is unbuilt area, as all of you know, what is from the aggregate area, if you remove what is the built up area, that will be the unbuilt area. Then we have a factor called specified area. For example, for the 4 metros, that is Bombay, Calcutta, Delhi and Chennai, the specified area is 60%. For 26 other cities, including Hyderabad, Pune and other cities, it is 65%. Then for rest of the country, it is 70%. So, what we do is, we compare the unbuilt area with the specified area. For instance, in some of the cases, specified area may be higher than 70% also. Suppose there is a municipal regulation stating that in a plot 75% of the area you cannot build anything. There we take 75% as a specified area. So, then what we do? We compare the unbuilt area with the specified area. For example, in a given plot, let us say 80% is unbuilt area. That means only on the 10% of the portion a building is built. So we take 80% as the unbuilt area. Then let us say it is the Bombay in the Mumbai city. So 60% is the specified area. So the gap between the unbuilt area and the specified area is 20%. So what happens? We have three yardsticks. If the difference between unbuilt area, that is the unbuilt area being higher, difference between the unbuilt area and specified area is up to 5%, we take it that the value of the house is what we worked out earlier, as Mr. Vishwanath told. If it is more than 5% but less than 10%, less than or equal to 10%, we increase the valuation of the house by 20% of what we have already calculated. Suppose it is more than 10% but less than or equal to 50%, we increase it by 30%. And in case it is more than 15% but less than 20% are equal, we increase by 40%. This is how we calculate. So that is how where we build the adjustments to the value, keeping in view the vacant portion of the land.
So, Mr. Sai, from what you told, I understood what is unbuilt area. Unbuilt area is an area on which no building has been constructed.
Is there.
Then what is aggregate area and what is specified area?
Aggregate area is the total plot of the land. Specified area is a certain parameter we are fixing, that up to this point you can have unbuilt area. Loosely speaking, up to, that means up to 65% there can be unbuilt area, or maybe 5% more than that.
So, that is the total area on which no property has been built being unbuilt area. The property on which certain leavage is allowed is specified area.
Specified area.
Very good. Mr. Sai, in the same vein, how is life interest valued?
Life interest, actually we take it from the, there is a schedule to the in the schedule 3 of section 17 of the Wealth Tax Act, there are certain formulae.
Okay.
Life interest, actually we have to take, if you take any asset which is taxable to wealth, life interest is taken from the starting point is the average annual income from the asset. So we take last 3 years average annual income, we average it out, then multiply by a factor, that is the valuation factor, which is 1 by P plus D minus 1. That means 1 by P plus D is one factor, minus 1 is another factor. What is P? P is nothing but we go to the life interest calculations, insurance LIC calculations. The table is transported from the LIC calculations. So what we do, we take it as the annual premium. P is the annual premium and D is a factor containing the interest, which is normally 6.5%.
Mr. Sai, if I can interrupt you, we are getting a call from outside. Hello? Hello? Hello, Cheppandi?
సార్ ఇప్పుడు చిన్న క్వశ్చన్ అండి, ఇప్పుడు వెల్త్ ట్యాక్స్ ఎగ్జామ్షన్స్ ఇవన్నీ ఉన్నాయి చెప్పారు కదా.
అవునండి.
ఇప్పుడు సపోజ్ ఇన్ వన్ ఫ్యామిలీ ద హెడ్ ఆఫ్ ది మదర్ ఇస్ హ్యావింగ్ ప్రాపర్టీ,
ఓకే,
అండ్ మదర్ మే సంబడి మెంటల్లీ రిటార్డెడ్ పర్సన్, దెన్ హౌ టు డీల్ దట్ ప్రాపర్టీ టాక్సేషన్ ఆఫ్ ఎవ్రీథింగ్, ప్లీజ్ క్లారిఫై ద థింగ్ సార్.
ఓకే అండి. Mr. Sai, if you could understand what our caller was telling, now we were talking about certain assets being exempted from wealth tax. Now he says that suppose in his family his mother is there, the mother has got property which is more than the exempted limit, but then the mother is mentally retarded. Now we know as per the Indian Contract Act we should not have any contract with persons who are expressly prohibited from entering into any contract. Now here is a case where there is a person who has got wealth more than the exempted limit, but then falls into the category of people with whom we are not supposed to enter into a contract. Now can you please clarify on this?
Yeah, got it. Now the question of levy of wealth tax has nothing to do with transfer of an asset. What the gentleman is talking is from the point of Contract Act, that lady being mentally retarded, she cannot transfer the property. That does not mean that the property does not belong to her. On a given valuation date, she is very much there, the property is there, only thing is somebody else will file a return on her behalf. For example, her representative can file a return, and if the wealth is, if the property is above the wealth tax limit, that is what Mr. Vishwanath told, 15 lakh rupees, and also the asset is taxable, definitely wealth tax has to be paid. This is how it is. There has nothing to do with the transfer of the asset. Transfer of the asset and asset belonging to a person are two different things.
There are two different things altogether. There is no overlapping whatsoever.
Yeah.
So, any person who has got wealth which is more than the exempted limit will be taxable through a representative. So, it is not imperative that the person himself has to pay the tax, his representative can pay the tax. Mr. Sai, we were talking about the life insurance valuation.
Yeah. When we are talking of life interest valuation, as I already told, you have to take average annual income from that asset, which how much it is yielding, then that means the last 3 years. Then you multiply by a valuation factor taken from actually life insurance calculations, that is 1 by P plus D minus 1. P is actually the annual premium we pay for life insurance, depending upon the age it will change. That is why the table contains different ages. As you grow older, you pay more premium. Then D is a factor which is based on the rate of interest, that means yield, that is I by I plus 1. I is the interest rate which is taken in the LIC standard calculations as 6.5% per annum. That is how it is. So, you work out the life interest and that life interest will be taxed. But again we go back and say it should be a taxable asset. Then only, if it is not, the asset is not taxable.
So, if I can disturb you again, sir, I will
Please.
get back to you again. Hello? Hello?
హలో
చెప్పండి.
సార్, ఇప్పుడు మీరు చెప్పినట్టుగా కాకుండా ఇప్పుడు నౌ డేస్ యూఆర్ సీయింగ్ సో మెనీ ఇన్స్టిట్యూషన్స్ ఆఫ్ ద మెంటలీ ఛాలెంజ్డ్ పీపుల్, సమ్ చిల్డ్రన్ ఆర్ దేర్ ఇన్ సంత్.
Okay.
But the elder sir are giving some properties to the people. So he cannot pay the, is there any exemption for the mentally challenged people? Any exemption is there or not, just to clarify to me. Any exemption is there on mentally challenged people or physically challenged people? Is there any exemptions or not?
Okay. I will again repeat the question for the benefit of our viewers. Now, this particular caller wanted to know whether the Wealth Tax Act gives any exemption for people of unsound mind, people who are mentally challenged, people who are retarded. Does the act for such people in themselves give any exemption, is what the caller was asking about. We will ask Mr. Sai.
Unfortunately, there is no such exemption. If the asset belongs to you and it is taxable and above the minimum taxable limit, then you are bound to pay tax. Maybe somebody else will file the return and maybe he will pay the tax out of the proceeds or whatever income the asset generates, but tax has to be paid.
So, and again may I just remind the viewers, wealth tax is a direct tax and it is a tax on the benefits derived from the ownership of a property. According to the Income Tax Act, if a minor has got income more than the exempted limit, do not we tax it? We still do tax it. How do we tax it? We attach this income to the parent of the minor, or the minor has got a guardian, we attach the income to the guardian. So, there is no way the person, we will not enter into a direct contract with the person, but then whatever income he has earned, that income will be taxable, and that income is taxable in the hands of the parent who has got more gross total income. In the same way, even for wealth tax, where a person has got wealth more than the exempted limit, he has to pay tax. The act does not give any special preference to people who are mentally retarded. It does not give any special preference or exemption to people who have got some deformities or things like that. And remember, the act also does not give any special exemption to senior citizens, does not give any special exemption to women. The act in itself talks about what is wealth and what are the assets on which the tax has to be paid. It does not talk about who is the owner behind the asset. It does not say if the wealth belongs to X, this would be the liability. If the wealth belongs to Y who has got a disability, this would be the liability. It does not say that. It just says that where a person has got wealth more than the exempted limit, he has to pay tax on it, and the rate of tax is 1% on the wealth that exceeds rupees 15 lakhs for the current assessment year. We are time and again asking Mr. Sai what is life interest valuation. The last time again I would want to ask him the life interest valuation. Have you told us the life interest valuation?
Yeah,
sir?
they already explained it. As I said, you take average annual income from asset for the last 3 years, you take the income and average it out. Then you multiply with the factor 1 by P plus D minus 1, where P is the annual premium payable for life interest calculations, and D is nothing but interest by interest plus 1. Interest is taken at 6.5% per annum. That is how we work out.
Sir, we were saying that the Wealth Tax Act is administered by the Income Tax Department.
Yeah.
So, there are no separate authorities for wealth tax, or is it that the Income Tax Department or income tax officials themselves will take care of wealth tax valuation and things like that? Who are the wealth tax authorities?
For administration of any act, you have to define the authorities in the act. So, Wealth Tax Act also defines the authorities, but it says authorities as per section 116 of the Income Tax Act. So, in a way what happens, then we transport to most of the provisions in wealth tax also we do that, mutus mutandis we take from Income Tax Act. Now, who are these authorities? Like you have got an income tax officer. For the purpose of wealth tax assessment, he becomes wealth tax officer. Assistant Commissioner of Income Tax, he becomes Assistant Commissioner of Wealth Tax. Like that the hierarchy goes up to the board level. So, when we administer Wealth Tax Act, it comes with the Income Tax Act. So, when we administer the Wealth Tax Act, we write our designations as Wealth Tax Officer, Assistant Commissioner of Wealth Tax, and use the relevant sections of the Wealth Tax Act.
So, the section 116 of the Income Tax Act lays down the authorities, as you had said, and the same authorities also will function as wealth tax officials. But then the nature of work they do will define whether they are wealth tax authorities or income tax authorities, from my understanding of what Mr. Sai has told. I hope I am correct, sir.
Yeah, in a way, when a case comes for income tax before you under your jurisdiction, wealth tax also comes with you. The wealth tax part of the case also comes to you. So, it comes as a whole. That is how it is.
So, do we have the same powers of search and seizure as we have got for income tax?
Yeah, in Wealth Tax Act also we have sections dealing with search and seizure. There are 3 conditions prima facie to be satisfied for a search, that is for any search, either the Director of Income Tax, in this case we call Director of Wealth Tax, or Director General has to issue a warrant of authorization. For issuing a warrant of authorization, there should be adequate satisfaction. And how do you arrive at the satisfaction is like this: if a particular person has been summoned to produce certain evidence, he did not give his evidence related to his wealth, number 1. Number 2 is, even if he is summoned, he may not give the evidence related to his wealth. And the third factor is, he has got unaccounted wealth in his possession, he or she or whatever it is. Therefore, in either of these 3 conditions, you have a satisfaction that this is a case worth searching. Therefore, a director or a director general will issue a warrant of authorization to the concerned officers, then they go and execute the search. Rest of the provisions, the procedural aspect of search, it is like Income Tax Act.
Okay. So, even as we have got income escaping assessment under Income Tax Act, we probably also have wealth escaping assessment under the Wealth Tax Act.
Yeah, surely we do have. Section 17 lays down the parameters, and then depending upon the specific conditions, we reopen the assessment.
Okay. So, we have got very interesting perspectives that are thrown up here. The Income Tax Department administers the Wealth Tax Act, and almost say the provisions of Income Tax Act would be applicable even to the Wealth Tax Act, as from my understanding of what sir has been telling us. Sir, in the same way, do we also have revision proceedings here?
We have got revision proceedings also under the Wealth Tax Act, and revision is of 2 kinds. One is coming from the SSC. An SSC can make a request, suppose an officer passes an order, and the commissioner, the administrative commissioner, has the powers of revision under section 35 of the Wealth Tax Act. So, when a person is aggrieved with the order of, let us say, an assistant commissioner, he has 2 choices. One is he can go through the appeal route, or he can go to the commissioner and request him to revise the order, and commissioner can do on his own motion also. So, in such a case, commissioner of wealth tax will examine the case and pass appropriate orders. The second variety is if an officer has passed an order which is erroneous and prejudicial to the interest of revenue, then the commissioner either on his own motion or upon reference by the officer can revise the order again. Then in such a case he has to give opportunity of hearing to the SSC, conduct certain hearings and examine the points, then pass an order. And in case of SSC mooting the revision petition, he has to do it within 1 year from the order cannot be passed within 1 year from the end of the financial year in which a original order is passed by the officer. But in case of department mooting, the order by commissioner cannot be passed beyond 2 years from the end of the financial year in which the original order was passed. That is the only difference. Okay. This is how they are almost similar to the provisions in the Income Tax Act.
So, that was the discussion which we have had on the wealth tax and its assessment. This was for the benefit of the students of MCOM final year of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Open University. I sincerely wish and I also hope and I assume that the discussion has been really very fruitful and very beneficial to you all. I will just sum up what we have seen. We have seen what is the jurisdiction of Wealth Tax Act. We have seen what are assets. We said assets are of 6 categories which Vishwanath sir has just told us, and where the person has got in wealth which is more than the exempted limit, which is 15 lakhs for the current assessment year, he has to pay wealth tax at the rate of 1%. We have seen the method of valuation of assets, how they have to be valued, how house property is valued, what is jewelry, how it has to be valued. We also have seen the method of valuation of business assets and things like that. Now, once we arrive at the value of the total assets belonging to the SSC, on that value tax has to be levied at the rate of 1% for the current assessment year. I hope this discussion is really useful to you all, and such discussions we will have even in the future. Thank you very much.